Hey, I know this is a weird time of day to go live, but it was just the fastest way for me to sit down and get this out there while it was on my mind. I've been thinking about something that happened to one of my clients last week, and I thought it was the perfect story for Mindfulness Monday because what happened to my client last week is a common, I'll say, mistake that people make in their divorce process when they're really just making decisions based out of a place of anger rather than a place of common sense. It doesn't even have to be empathy or compassion. A lot of times it's just really, are you shooting yourself in the foot because you're so angry that you're missing the big picture? So I wanted to share this story because it was so almost absurd, but a perfect example. So my client was in support court in Pennsylvania last week. And the first thing that happens in Pennsylvania is that the court is going to run numbers just purely based on your incomes. And that's common probably in most states. Support is pretty uniform across the entire state. That's why I always think it's best to keep it out of the system because you don't have much flexibility. They're going to pigeonhole every family into the same box. Outside of the system, you can agree to whatever makes sense for your family, using the numbers as a gauge, maybe. So my client had looked at the numbers. I can coach people how to do that, how to figure it out. You know, they are what they are if you're running them through the system. And so she had an idea of what the numbers were going to be when she got to court. And it's very low key. You're sitting around a conference table. It's not like you're testifying in front of a judge. And so she knew what to expect, and things were going pretty straightforward with how she expected. And the thing that I will say is that, so then her ex-husband didn't appear for this conference, they call it, and just his lawyer was there. So first off, he's paying a lawyer to sit there for 2 hours to run through numbers that, you know, pretty much anyone can figure out what they're going to be within a few minutes or a few dollars. But there's a very expensive private lawyer sitting there and it takes 2 hours. So let's say there's $600 spent on the lawyer just to be there, plus the lawyer's time in running the numbers ahead of time and preparing for the conference. Plus, my client had requested this conference back in January, and so this was the middle of May, and her ex-husband, I guess, in an attempt to avoid having to pay what he is going to have to pay, had continued it 3 times. So then the attorney is getting paid to file a continuance 3 times, communicate with the court. So this is extremely costly. At the end of the conference, after the numbers had been plugged in, the numbers came in within $40 of what my client estimated they were going to be. And so I said, okay, that sounds good, we're done. But the private attorney had to call her client and run through the numbers with him, and my client can't hear that conversation. They're in a separate room or whatever. But when she finally comes back, the lawyer says, my client will agree to the figures if you agree to round down to the closest 1,000 or whatever it was. So they basically, let's say it was $1,000 and $1,030 a month. He wanted to pay $1,000 even a month. And my client laughed and said, that's fine. He's going to nickel and dime me for $30. But in the end, she was within a range where she knew she was going to be. And the whole thing, it just struck her as so absurd. And we laughed about it because when there's a private attorney involved, I feel like that private attorney had a responsibility to say to her client back in January, here's what these numbers are going to be. Let's just fix this amount or whatever, because we can all see what it's going to be. But instead, they paid to move the date 3 times, then they paid to show up at the conference, and none of that would have been necessary. So it's just an example of when you're motivated from a place of anger or trying to spite the other person, you really are almost making your own life more difficult. And in my opinion, that's always counterproductive in the end. But my client was happy. She had known what to expect when she went in there. It landed exactly where she thought it was going to be. And she got a nice life lesson out of it as well, in that I guess a leopard doesn't change his spots, as the saying goes. But just avoid that in your own divorce. Do not make your decisions from a place of anger or blame or spite, because that's counterproductive for you personally and your entire family. So it was good being back on Facebook. I'll try to do this more often, but I wanted to get that out there today. Have a great rest of your day.